What's going on, Satya?
Hello, how are you doing, Dr. Ray?
Good, good. Now this is the time for us to perform like we're spiritual and
Oh,
we
yeah.
have all the answers.
Oh, wait, let me get in my meditation. Ready to go.
Are you deep? Are you in there, my brother?
I was just channeling the source. Mhm.
I'm glad you can flow with me in that. I wasn't sure where you're going to go with that.
Yeah,
Here's the funny thing outside of what we're going to talk about is I used to play in an 80s parody band.
nice.
And in this band, there's a lot of bantering. So if you can't keep up with us, if you were not able to keep up with us, you probably wouldn't work. So what we would do is our auditions were not necessarily like just with this at a rehearsal. In fact, we hated rehearsal. It was in front of a crowd. And it was where it was in the beginning of maybe a show when there was less people. And it was more if we can create even shock value, even if a guy botched it, that itself would be entertaining with the type of band we were. But we would throw a guy up there and then we would throw stuff off of him. And if he can keep up, like, you're in. It was a big
Wait,
thing.
that's how you audition people? You said that's
well, well, the thing is that it wasn't you. Okay, you had to be a good musician, but
yeah,
you had to be good with
yeah,
comedy, which is why, like, I think we connect.
yeah. No, I definitely think besides keeping everything light, it is kind of fun. Like I'm a wordsmith, like I like playing with words and images and picking up things. So I love playing with that and finding the joy and like humor and that and all this stuff. So yeah.
Cool. So Satya is the author of Enlighten the Fuck Up. And share more about that and like what that's about. I mean, whether you want to give clear stories about what you see and the spiritual community. And what's interesting is that when I even say that, I for a moment I think, well, Christians can be going, what is he talking about? To like, what does that mean even specifically? Like, such as if you're looking at like the West Coast, like neo tantra burner type of people,
Yeah.
definitely like that is like its own subculture. So what even culture would you say like, you kind of more bring light to like what your book is about?
Yeah, you and I both have had a background in a lot of different spiritual traditions.
Yeah.
We've dove in it, and I'm sure we've both had benefit from meditation, from maybe some movement thing, yoga or fitness or all that stuff. The emphasis of my book is really it's a collection of stories of things that circumstances in life that shifted the way I thought about stuff. This book is not about these techniques or this is the when I focused on the third eye or my yoga class, unless there's something that funny happened in yoga or shifted the way I fundamentally thought about things. So it's written in a very South Park Family Guy way. It's tasteless, but clever, sometimes just tasteless, maybe. But it's certain things that happen to me, interactions, strange, just regular interactions. And this is why I think also my spirituality, if you want to call it, is a little different than others in that I'm not really emphasizing, even though I like it, the metaphysics or the meditative, the breathing, all that stuff. Again, all useful tools, but I'm really emphasizing living life and seeing what happens and reflecting on whatever happens and shifts you and goes, wait, why did I get upset or what was I doing or what was my real motivation? Like that is where spirituality lives to me. That your life is your spirituality. So it's a collection of stories, funny stories. At the end of each story, there's takeaways and reflections, which are like deep life coaching, journaling kind of questions for the reader to really dive in more than just be entertained.
Well, you mentioned about like life experiences. So is it through yoga that you like that is say like the tool, the modality, but for you it's like what do you like, it's more important what you do when you get out this in the real world when you go to the grocery store. Can you share more about that? Because like you and I
Yeah.
know that there are some people, and this does not come from judgment. This is just more from that place of like bringing light to the shadows and also
Yeah.
like normalizing experiences for people if they just feel like they suck at meditating.
Yeah.
Because there are some people who can just sit and shut themselves their mind off from the world, or they seem like they can keep their composure, and act spiritual, but
Yeah.
no one's like has a camera on them when like things don't go as expected,
Yeah.
you know?
I was just reminded of a story, thinking of your band story, friends of mine and I once went to Puerto Rico together and we were in this villa together and we would have hilarious conversations around the dinner table. So finally we set up video cameras and we were all like really super stiff, like no one did
Hmm.
it because we were performing now,
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people can perform spirituality, so they know what it's supposed to be, what they've been told. And so then when they get in their mode, and I've had to watch myself where my ego jumped in and as a yoga teacher every now and then be like, oh, here's the sage advice. It's like I'm just a person exploring my ways, have some experience, have some insights, So for me, if you ask anyone like, what's your spiritual practice? Probably everyone's gonna list, oh, I meditate or I do yoga or I do Buddhist practices. Like that's spiritual practices, but I don't separate from life and I get more from my interactions in life with people, with circumstances, with frustrations, all that stuff.
Well, give me an example. For example, if you were supposedly in a hurry, even though spiritually you know there's always divine intervention and divine appointment. So if you're in a flow, it doesn't matter if you're late to the airport. But if you really want to get on that airplane on time,
Yeah.
and let's say that due to uh, some type of, I don't want to say like misarrangement, but it doesn't go as planned, how would you look at that moment? Especially if you had your
Yeah.
excitement on, like, just say you're visiting some woman that you
Yeah.
like, and like she's supposedly getting things ready, like to this plan, and then the plan gets canceled. What would you
Yeah.
do with it?
Yeah, I mean, those are perfect examples. Listen, while everything does happen in divine time, you could say, we're also living in a world where we have appointments. If you and I didn't say at this time, we just don't get it done.
Yeah.
I once wrote a piece which talked about being in the now. And I said, imagine you show up late to work and you go, you know what? I was walking in Central Park and there are ducks following these little baby ducks following a duck. And I just sat for hours. I was so mesmerized. I was so in the moment.
Hmm.
You think your boss would be like, awesome. Can you stay a little late just to make up the work? No, they would be like, that's just not how it works. So, there is truth that everything's in divine timing, but if you want to keep appointments and be responsible and pay your bank balance, like you
Hmm.
still have to be real in the world. So for me, I always reflect about what pattern is in me. One day, this is rollerblading days, but you mentioned the 80s. I can bring us back a little bit. I'm rollerblading and some car kind of slightly cuts off and then he gets stuck at the light.
Hmm.
And part of me right away is thinking like, yeah, screw you, like you deserve that. And then I'm thinking, I shifted because why am I upset? What's the big deal? I don't know what's going on in this person's life. And I thought to myself, man, I actually wish the person made the light because obviously they're in a rush or they're feeling stressed. And if that could have relieved that. And it's a different expansive way of versus thinking about whether the world or myself or why am I frustrated? What's my rush? That I get a lot out of that more than just closing my eyes. I do think closing your eyes gives you a perspective, sometimes gives you a little more buffer from your thoughts, from your identity and all that. But
Hmm.
it's often hard for people to jump from that into life and then apply like, okay,
Hmm.
we get caught up in the moment. We're like, this isn't good. Yes, someone can be by definition an asshole, but
Yeah.
it's relevant. The relevance is, well, what are you going to do with that? How is that affecting you? Why is that affecting you? What
Yeah.
is your opinion how they should be that's affecting you? And whose fault who's responsible for your lack of peace?
Yes, it's interesting, and we often hear the whole idea of just letting go, and you'll hear songs on Spotify where if you like try to look for something that's spiritual or meditative, the lyrics of letting go or going in the flow is there. And what you just shared for me, it reminds me of like what that means in real life, such as here you can have an idea how this person should have drove his or her car. And by hanging on to that belief, it only creates stress and judgment in your body. But when you're able to step back a little bit more and connect to more awareness, and maybe even your heart, where you recognize there's something bigger than myself, maybe here, you're able to kind of connect to the story of like maybe he needed to get to the hospital. Maybe there's something bigger than what's happening here. And it's a great place to get to. And some people will say, use plant medicine to let go of those narratives. Some people will do breath work. Some people will do yoga. Some people will journal. But most people, I don't think they really know what that means to let go. And it's like letting go of the illusion that you're fucking right. Like that, it went exactly this way, the way that you're pissed off about, which is
Yeah.
causing suffering within yourself. And when you're
Yeah.
able to let go of that, like you have that moment of freedom, like, oh, and you're able to think outside of your own echo chamber.
Yeah. It's funny. Even if you are right, like say I go up to that guy and go, "Oh, you must be in a rush." He's like, "No, I didn't like rollerbladers. I wanted to cut you off." Like I could be right, but it's not like you said, is how's that helping your peace of mind, really? How's that helping anything? How's that helping your story? Most of us want to just share with our friends. You're not going to believe the asshole I bumped into today or saw that. And like it's a fun story, and like we want to hold on to these stories. I mean, even in like politics, religion, like we want to go like this person was, and again, practical reality, there are probably better policies and worse policies for the general good, but it's like so many people are holding on to ideas of what a politician is, and like sometimes I don't think they're really seeing, it's not making them happy. There's people who like love him or hate him, Trump. He's a catalyst, he brings chaos. There's people who cannot function. They hear his name and they just start going like, oh, this, and like you shut off. And like that's not helpful for anyone. That's not helpful for you. And if I want to manipulate you, all I have to do is press those buttons, and you go nuts. So, like you're saying, like it's like there could be other stories, but even if the story you're right on the story, it's not about that. I think about, and I know you as a life coach and relationship coach, when you're helping people, it's not just about the circumstance. Like I learned in life coaching, what's the presenting agenda? Someone goes, "Oh, my boss hates me." Okay, we discuss. But the real thing is like, who are you and who are you becoming, and what is your transformational goal? And so, like, right or wrong is less. That's a little more surface. Like, how are you? Like, anyone can ask themselves, like, is this the person I want to be? Like, that's what I ask myself a lot. And sometimes I don't mind being jerky once in a while. Like, I'm okay with that. I'm good with that. That's the character stuff. But it's like, if there's stuff where I'm not being as sensitive, where I'm being, where I'm getting caught up, where I'm getting, I go, it's not really the person I want to be. So I need to explore that more.
Well, dude, I lost my shit about what was it? I forgot. It was last week, and it's the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
And it was with a Wells Fargo customer service person. And in that moment when he basically was reading a script and he kept repeating himself. And when I said, "I'm ready to go," "Yes, show me how to do this." "Are you ready, sir?" And it just kept going on. I said, "Listen," I go, "I don't know if you're reading a script." I said, "But yes, I want to move forward with this." And then he did it again. And I snapped. First time in a while. I mean, I raised my voice. And of course he got off the line but immediately I went right to, he's got a family. He's doing his best. Wow, what was going on there for me? You know what I mean? And I just let it go. I mean, it's not like I was mad at him, but it came out of me. And it wasn't just that moment. And what I mean by that is that day I had less sleep, okay? Then also there were some other things kind of going on that were pressing on my nervous system.
Yeah.
And so sometimes we can become like these versions that we don't prefer just because of that.
Yeah.
But there's got to be enough forgiveness and the ability to kind of step back from that and forgive ourselves. Because here's the other thing, and it doesn't warrant anyone to walk around and just be a jerk and go, "Oh, well, they attracted me."
Yeah.
But I also know that why is it for him, he had that experience with me as well. Like maybe he got off the call and thought, wow, maybe he'll go to his boss and say, can I like be more personable with people? Can I connect with people more? Because it seems like more customers get upset when you have me stick to the script. You know what I mean? I don't know, you know, but it's like sometimes you don't know how they're going to grow, you know, but it doesn't mean that we have to grow through chaos. It doesn't mean that we should just purposely trigger people, but there's an opportunity for everyone involved.
Yeah, I mean that's awesome. A couple things you said that I really appreciate is you reflect afterwards about like things. Like a lot of people will not reflect at all. They won't go any deeper because you're looking at yourself and going, is that how I want to be, or why did I do that? What I also love though is the differences because like we talked about like spirituality, what people call that could be
Mhm.
like they think you're supposed to always be kind or always that. And I do think there's a whole gamut of emotions. While the middle way in Buddhism, people can have different ideas about it. It doesn't mean you're gray and nothing. Like you can be excited, you can be frustrated, but
Mhm.
you don't hang out at the extremes nonstop. Like you
Mhm.
you want to kind of come back to a certain base and balance. So I think there is a lot of lessons in that. And you know what you said, if that person, to their credit, I would call is spiritual, it doesn't mean they meditate. It means they want to grow and reflect and be aware. And said just what you said, go, how could I be better? Like, don't I want to connect to people? I want to sell, but I want to connect.
Mhm.
Like then that your frustration actually stirred up the pot to get them to do
Mhm.
that. If you just dealt with it, they would never grow. So it's really, like you said, not justifying for bad behavior, what we might call bad, but it is kind of cool to think how we interact with
Yeah.
everyone can affect everyone in a positive way, even if it seems negative how it came out, you know.
Well, there's many people out there who, let's say, were the jerk, and that was toward me. Um, it was a projection, and I did something good with that.
Yeah.
I did something good with that. So um, I think that like every conversation, there's some type of feedback in there and an exchange that could be a gift for all.
Yeah.
You know, there's something you said about the whole divine timing thing, and I know I mentioned it first, but you said that we got to keep our appointments. And what's interesting is that when I was living in Ashland, Oregon, and oh my God, like it would drive me crazy because it is like a mecca for those who, let's say, are so etheric, so heavenly, they might not be too earthly good. Like they have a hard time waking up
Yeah.
or keeping up with commitments. And I've never experienced this anywhere else where they might cancel an appointment by just waking up and going, you know, I was just feeling a little bit off today, so I don't want to go.
Yeah.
And it was a constance. Like it was, I didn't know this about the culture, and I'm not judging it, but it's really hard to function and get things done. And when I was there and setting appointments with, like, say, functional doctors, I was surprised that they would ask for me to pay ahead of time. Then I found out because that was one of the reasons.
Yeah.
People would flake out. So this way, that if I did flake out, they kept something or all of it.
Yeah.
And that was a thing there. But instead of holding the culture accountable and raising the bar,
Yeah.
that they approached it a different way. And even also there, which I noticed, which was strange, is when I would go on Google and look at like the reviews, only place I ever seen in my entire life where all these 5 stars and where it's just let's be kind. Let's
Oh,
if you say if it's not nice, you shouldn't say anything at all. But wait a minute, if it's poor customer service,
yeah.
then you're just sharing your experience. You're not
Yeah.
saying anything else other than what you experience. But in that, like such like the worst customer service, a lot of entitled personalities, a lot of that spiritual bypassing, and a lot of them are struggling financially to just hard to make things grow because the inability to say keep commitments. Because for me, if you are not able to keep a commitment with another person, you cannot be committed to yourself. And if you cannot be committed to yourself, there's a likely chance it's hard for you to create a container that would say help you with your health on a consistent basis, or to build a relationship, or to build a business. So in that, like with those commitments is a commitment to the self, and those things that we want, like we want to grow in our lives, is an extension of that. Therefore, it was so flowy and always in the process. You would, for me at least, I didn't see the progress. And for me, like spirituality means learning about myself, knowing that there's so much about this in the unseen, that most things I get frustrated with are just an illusion. But by knowing this and this spiritual curriculum, that it allows me to navigate on the earth, say playing field a lot easier, and therefore I'm able to manifest the things that I prefer. So as an example, that means that having a healthy relationship, that would be having a successful business, that would be improving my health and everything else. It doesn't mean that there's no room for growth. In fact, I continue to grow. But it would be where physical reality is a feedback loop for all of us to see if we're moving into the actions that's creating what we prefer. And if not, then of course we step back, we breathe, we do whatever process we need to, we integrate again, then we move into that direction again. And, but a lot of people just think that like it's a state of mind. We just sit there and I'm just going to be spiritual and I'm going to speak positively the whole time. It's not that at all. It's living your life as a human.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's interesting is when people look at spirit, like when I see some people who are real spiritual as far as the practice, they can meditate. They might meditate. Like I meditate 3 hours a day. I do this much, and I'm like, damn, that's just. But how are they paying attention to the same disciplines in life? And have had that experience like you, where people would like be late or miss appointment. I'm like, what's going on? And it's like, oh, I just had this, I was doing this thing or whatever. And so to me, when we look at the deeper aspects of discipline, of consciousness, of kindness, of all those things, how you act it doesn't really matter. One can look at it like religion or whatever. If one of the goals of religion, I don't know what the goals of religion, maybe it's to feel more at peace. Maybe it's to feel connected to something bigger. So does it matter if I go like this, or if I go like this, or if I go like that? It doesn't really matter my hand position so much. It's more about that section. So if we're talking about discipline, and in the Kriya Yoga tradition that I've been initiated in, they talked about the old masters used to say, your life is determined by your discipline, like your life,
Yes.
and so we go discipline. That sounds very unsexy. That sounds like, oh no, I got to work hard. I got to get up early. I got to hustle, but people will apply that to some of their spiritual practices, but then they all the flaky things and inconsiderations with people. That's not really, to me, that's where we're cutting a line between what's spiritual and what's not. And if you're not in your life trying to apply everything, what's the point? Like as a martial artist, I when I first joined up one martial arts school that I pursued, right away they're like, they have a fight team. I'm like, I want to join, I want to play with that. And it's not like I just want to kick ass, man. It's fighting. But I don't just want to punch air. I just don't want to have someone. I want to see what happens under stress. Can this stuff apply? And maybe it can. And that's where you learn. It's just like all the videos we see online. You want to make fun of spiritual people. Look at martial arts, self-defense stuff. So many martial arts would be like, that would never work. And there's a lot of stuff which clearly wouldn't. And some stuff is really cool. People are very critical. So if you can't find in your life that balance of balancing those things, like we said, your bank book, being kind to people, making appointments, committing to your word, if I say I'm going to do something, you and I had an appointment for something and something else came up, that you were graciously offering me a freebie, and it was within 24 hours. And I was like, damn, I have something else, that would bring me a little money or whatever. But I'm like, I have a commitment and my word. And I honor my word more than I honor money, So at that point, I had to reach out to you and be like, here's what's up. If you were like, listen, I would be like, I'm in, dude.
Dude, by the way, that was cool. That said everything. I don't, it's not like I necessarily judge people. However, unconsciously, I imagine I'm being discerning, and I think we kind of keep some type of track record. And through those experiences like that, which was positive, it creates trust.
Yeah.
Like I can say, you are a friend. I would say, you know, could I ask you for help and know that if you needed more support or if it wouldn't work out, would you reach out to me? By what you just did the other day would be an example of your character in action.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I appreciate that. And it's utterly important, you know, because there's a lot of that spiritual bypassing that I see in, you know, like the community that we might be talking about. And I can, you know, I'm going to share one perspective, like this could be the reason why or reasons why. And that'd be that a person finally realizes that he or she has been stuck in the matrix. You know what I mean? Like they're waking up really early and they're living in New York and they're kind of hustling and whatever. So they're like, you know, in extreme performance mode, extreme masculine energy. And so when they finally have an experience, some type of awakening, they might go, oh my God, all that shit was just bullshit. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? So they start moving in the other extreme, you know,
Yeah.
in the feminine, you know, kind of going into the flow to thinking, oh, this feels better. It must be right.
Right.
But there's got to be some type of balance point where it's, yes, that all of it is an illusion, but you do have a responsibility to certain things, to things that you've created, to your word,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know? And I'll give you an example, like an extreme would be where, and I've seen it, where whether it's a man or a woman, but I've seen it more with men, where it's a father and he thinks his higher calling is to leave his child. Like it's just not in alignment with my purpose, or it's really that he can't figure out in his head how to make it work with the co-parent.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Or whatever it is, but not recognizing, wait a minute, my child is part of this. And if I really connected to my true abundance, to what is truly possible, then everything could work the way it's supposed to, not what my ego wants.
Yeah.
And yeah, and you'll see that where people think just because in that moment they don't like something or they prefer something else, that they're willing to just give up responsibility for that. That would be like the ultimate, like just not taking care of your shit.
And what you're talking about with spiritual bypassing is basically using a spiritual explanation to not have human responsibilities.
Yeah.
And not only just responsibilities like, hey, you have a kid, it'd be nice to support it, but that's actually maybe part of your growth and part of your journey also. It's not just like our ideas of spirituality and what that means. I mean, one could just say, hey, I'm just being like the Buddha. He left his kid, yeah, he was a
Yeah.
deadbeat dad, and
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
you know what? I think I was just on an Amazon Live.
He's like the original entitled prince.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
he's
he
like,
really
do
is.
this. I don't want that responsibility. But I was on an Amazon Live, you know, like a podcast thing, and I was talking about being authentic and stuff. And one thing I feel like, you know, I might have left out, which I think is important. It deals with like spiritual bypassing. There is, I almost find no higher objective or directive of us is to be authentically what we came here to be,
Mhm.
whatever that might mean. The challenge starts happening is because people don't really know that. And they have so many ego layers or what they think. So then they'll think like, it's almost like when you said, this is how I feel. Like, who cares? I don't really care how you feel. You know, it's like, you know, and it's like, so they'll think like some of their stuff, what's authentic is like, well, I'm mad at you. So I'm like, that's not who you are is beyond all the stories, beyond all that, you know?
Yes.
It's hard to grasp on because talk about letting go. We want to, if someone goes, who are you, Dr. Ray? You're going to go, you know, some of us do it like a personals ab. We go, well, I'm a man who this is my profession. These are my
Mhm.
beliefs, you know, all that stuff. But
Yes.
beyond that, is really the authentic true. How do you express? And is that like, and then we can look at expanding that is how
Mhm.
much harm am I causing? Because say I get a job at the Mormon Tabernacle to give a lecture and they're like, no cursing, you know? And I'm like, but I curse, fuck that, you know? It's like, is that who I am really? I might like to express periodically with some seasoning of curses, but who I am is not the cursing, and I hope I can still express truth and a message beyond that, and have the compassion to know that someone's not going to get it. Like there's times to rattle the boat, and no one's going to get it if I'm just fuck this, fuck that, you know, like that. So I think being authentic is cool, but you have to really start looking back in and go, what is authentic? What am I calling authentic? This ego version of me or something beyond that? And that's harder. That's more work to figure out, I think, for a lot of people.
You know what's trippy is that I had no idea that that would come out of you. And the reason why, because the subtitle of your book is A Rebel's Guide to, what is it again?
Waking up, yes, a
Okay,
rebel's.
Rebel's Guide to Waking Up. So the author, Dr. Kelly Brogan, who wrote a book for women, she's amazing. And she describes how when she was like in this kind of activist mode, she was like this feminist and she like would diss on men. And then when she had come to integrating more of herself and taking personal responsibility, she adored men. You know, she had, you know, and has a, you know, she's amazing. And she talks about that kind of activist, rebellious, immature female she was. And that was just like kind of like the person who's protesting, a rebel literally out of cause,
Yeah,
fighting against everything just to be an asshole, or it's
yeah,
just like unhealed trauma or whatever, and not being responsible for anything that they do. And so when you shared that, I was like, that's really cool that you said that because I wasn't sure. And what I mean by that is like, I think it's amazing that you're able to say, okay, if I can't swear, you know, who cares? My essence, my teachings goes beyond
yeah,
these few words that are not going to be
yeah,
in my, you know, sermon or whatever. You know what I mean?
yeah,
And I think it's great. Like people get so attached to some identity. And what's funny is what they feel is typically their ego already creating separation and saying, then you must be against me or you don't accept me, versus that they have a preference and they want to connect with you and they want you to share your gifts. However, if you are truly flexible, you might be able to reach more people with sensitivity.
yeah. It goes back to what's our goal. You know, I
Yeah.
do think a big part of goals for any of us is to express ourselves how we express, like how we enjoy it. Some said this about Jesus, you know, why was he teaching in parables? And people be like, they're, you know, the
Mhm.
archaeologists, not maybe that's not the right term, but the people who study the history, they'd be like, oh, it's because, and that was a style of teaching back then. Maybe he just liked telling stories, you know, that's
Mhm.
also maybe like what he enjoyed doing, you know. And so I think there is something about finding our expression. But if, as a teacher, if you really want to stimulate people to grow in their way and stuff, and you know they speak Spanish and you're only going to speak English, you're just not going to get through to them. So then, do you care just more about? No, I want to speak English because I enjoy that much. I get it, but when
Mhm.
you use the word preference, you know,
Mhm.
preference doesn't mean like that's me. It means this is
Mhm.
what I prefer. I prefer it warmer out. It's winter here on the East Coast, you know,
Mhm.
a little cold, you know,
Mhm.
that my preference, it doesn't mean I can't function or I don't figure out how to function under these situations. I put on a little more clothes. You know, do that. So I find today a lot of people, it's not just in spirituality, their preferences become the absolute, you know?
Mhm.
And so
Yep.
then what they're doing is, and let's use spiritual terms, they're defining themselves, their ego, their this is defining themselves as this is who I am. You
Mhm.
know, I am a person who likes warm weather, you know, and it's like, that's an aspect of how you're expressing, but that's not who you are, you know. And if you have no flexibility, then you're going to find yourself the only people you can hang out with is a cult of the people who believe exactly like you.
Mhm.
Like we connect in a lot of ways, you know, and so there's something fun about that. And there's some we can talk shop, but
Mhm.
really, if we only hang out with the people who are they're our vibe, this is my vibe. We're not going to see some of the areas where we are going to get our buttons pushed, where someone's not going to treat you like on the phone call, talk to you in a certain way. They're not listening. And you're just like, oh, I want
Mhm.
everyone to listen to me, of course. I want everyone to like me, of course. But it's kind of cool to have some haters also and just see what that does to you. Just a little aside on that. My parents were very, proud of my book, and they had sent me pictures with it. Well, when they started reading it, like my mom was a little horrified by a lot of language and what have you. And we had a phone call, and it's kind of hard to hear her tone and their stuff, and even saying like, I don't feel comfortable like sharing this with my friends. And I
Mhm.
was like, ooh, and I started feeling certain vulnerabilities in me,
Mhm.
certain things, and it was interesting. Now, if everyone just tells me how great I am, I would never feel those vulnerabilities. I
Mhm.
wouldn't even know they were there. So all of a sudden, I started feeling it, and I started questioning things. Maybe I could have made it cleaner. Maybe I should make it. And a day later, I was like, no, I did it my way, and that's okay.
Mhm.
And not for everyone, and that's okay. But it was a real eye opener to where I had chinks in my armor.
That's interesting. I'm glad that you shared that because a big part of like this growth is, I guess the opposite would be like identifying with, you know, a sexual orientation or gender that is, you know, different than at birth. You know what I mean? Not to go down that path, but it would be where it's it's connecting to the idea of still being a version of what you hope your mom still loves and understands.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like there's this part of us for us still as adults who have parents who are still alive that that's really pushing the edges. Because I know that when you wrote that, there might be that reaction, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
so like it's like where you're not the bad son or the good son, but you're identifying with just being expression itself, that you have to do it for yourself with the knowingness that your parents could be triggered or don't understand it or won't share it with friends just because
yeah.
they can't find words to describe what the book's about.
Yeah. I remember telling my mom, the mystic Osho said he would give talks. He talked twice a day, usually for like 30 years straight, and they record everything. And he said, you can listen to me two ways. One is through love. You're so in love, it doesn't really even matter what the words are. And one is more meditative. Again, you can let the words go and stuff. Sometimes he would have pauses in his words, and those were designed to create gaps. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't good speaking, it was to create
Mm-hmm.
pause. And so I said to my mom, I go, maybe the next time when you come off against yet another blowjob reference, you could be like, just let it go, meditative, and keep plowing ahead. Don't let that disturb you. I just let it go and go on. She's like, I can't really do that. Like it was
Yeah.
just a bit much for her, which is also another lesson is that we can only bite off as much as we can chew.
Mhm.
Not everyone is gonna, and that can be a frustration for people in the spiritual world, is that if someone doesn't get you or whatever, it's that I find this a bunch. It's like, you're like, but you shouldn't, like, you can't, like, not everyone's ready for everything. Not everything serves everyone. And so we have to be also mindful of like what it is. But I think this family, there's something always about closeness with family. I believe if a man killed his father and he's in jail, if the ghost of his father came and said, I'm really proud of you, son, you stood up for yourself, he'd burst into tears, this toughest man around,
Mhm.
murderer, burst into tears because everyone still wants approval to some
Mhm.
level. And I really do think, we talk about judgment. No one talks about good judgment. They just say, don't judge people. They mean
Mhm.
bad judgment.
Mhm.
But good judgment is just as harmful in that we're establishing a judgment system. We're already saying like, okay, so hey, that's really great. Oh, so my worth it, like ultimately we do us, and it's like I'm glad you're happy. if you're not happy, cool, but I'm still going to do me. Like it's not,
Yeah.
I'm not affected by praise or insult, you
Yeah.
know?
That's great. And it's like, I know that like this share was about like talking about our books, about kind of like this spiritual bypass and other things like that. But what I think what's really good is that we both are authors, and a lot of people are afraid to put that book out there. They're afraid to truly express themselves. And it's not like you reach some level of enlightenment where it's like, oh, fuck you, mom. Like, I'm my own person anyway. There's still a moment of tenderness in that.
Yeah,
It's just part of your human experience with that, which I think is really cool.
yeah,
You know, like my book, if my parents, well, my mother wouldn't read it, and my father would have never understood it. It's
yeah,
just written that way, you know? And I know, like with my book, other people have bought it who know me, and I know they don't understand it.
yeah,
You know what I mean? They're not at that level. Not that I'm higher above. I just know that
yeah,
it's a kind of an advanced book for someone who is interested in psychology.
yeah,
And so, or for a person who's never done inner work or even thinks that way, it could be quite dense.
yeah,
So, I understand that, and where I experienced what you just shared was, let's say, with my closer friends, doesn't, and family, not a big deal. But online with things I really think, some things, like if we're talking about extraterrestrials or other things that I don't really share, there's still a part of me still moving through that where it's like I still want to be seen as a professional and grounded.
yeah, yeah,
So, it's not like I feel like I'm totally holding back, but I know that I have a lot of friends who are like just typical, like good old boys, eat steaks, drink beer, watch football. And so I know that some of the things, if I were to share that, they would just go, oh, Ray's a little out there, but they would accept me.
yeah, yeah,
I know them, like they accept me fully. Like they'll say Ray's always been a little bit eccentric and out there. But there's people I don't know, where they might say something and I don't even know why, but there's that part of me like, I know, like I don't have to put it out there.
yeah,
That's the reality of it. I don't have to put it out there. Like I'm good in my own life. I'm pretty authentic and feel good. But there's stuff I want to share because I'm excited about it.
yeah,
And those things, whether it's about, I'll give you an example. During 2020, when we were in the pandemic, I already had friends who were healing COVID. Okay. And I was sharing my excitement. And you know exactly what happened, right?
yeah. Got a lot
Okay.
of
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I was getting shut down. All this stuff. Some of my posts are getting removed and things like that. So here I had connections to like actually stuff that was working. Even ivermectin. Like we were getting it. Like we had friends getting it from Mexico.
yeah,
I lived in California, so they could just drive to San Diego and cross over the border or whatever. So there's real stuff happening, and I wanted to share it. And there's more stuff that I want people to have access to, so they can like maybe try it, learn about it, or whatever. And yet we're in a time and space that if you think differently, if you share differently, it can scare people.
yeah. Yeah, that's, I think one interesting aspect of what you were sharing also was bringing it back to you about like, you know, as much as you're truthful and honest, you're like, well, I don't want to share all my stuff because I still think that can have an effect that I don't really want to have right now. I'm going to compare that as not a bad thing. I'm going to compare that as a real thing. This is again navigating the world. You're on the first date with someone. You could be like, I'm going to be myself. This is what, and like you're blasting farts and doing this. And it's like, you know, probably by the fifth date, they're going to be much more comfortable with you and they're going to be okay and even laugh at that. But first, like people are still figuring each other out, and that can be dangerous. I also think, like we're saying with the Mormon tabernacle kind of thing, it's like, um, if you're party, what you do is I'm going to express myself. If it were only that, you go, yeah, I'm expressing my UFO stuff and all this. But if it's also about helping people and you have a desire to see people grow and expand and stuff, um, sometimes it's not helpful to share certain things. Like they're not going to be able to get over that.
Hmm.
Here's a kind of a silly example, but let's just say I'm not saying I am this, but let's just say I'm a great yoga teacher. I am saying I am that. But and you find out I'm a pedophile or whatever, and you take my class all the time, you love it. Most people can't separate that. They're not going
Hmm.
to be able to go like, I just get great yoga. I don't, I'm horrified, but with that, but I get so much from his yoga class. I'm going to keep going. Most people cannot separate that.
Hmm.
So forget pedophile, but let's say you're a Republican or this,
Hmm.
like again, you start speaking that there's going to be people who are not going to go to your class or not going to listen to you where they can benefit from it because they're unable to open up to that. Now, you can go extreme and I have and go, fuck it. I don't care. I'm going to do me. There's times for that. And there's times also to say like, nah, that's not going to actually serve me. Forgetting them, it's not even going to serve me. So I think it's an interesting balance to reflect on because as a spiritualist, and we get pulled into the thing, well, I should be truthful all the time. I should speak what I want. It's not being truthful doesn't mean you have to say whatever the hell comes into your head. I think that
Hmm.
actually happens on social media so much now. And people are like, but this is my opinion. Like, I don't really care to hear it all the time. You don't have to share it all the time. So
Yeah, it's being able to read the room and uh, yeah, some people are not necessarily ready for that. I'll give you an example. I can guarantee that there'll be someone who just heard what you said and heard the word pedophile and wonder if there's any truth to that and why he brought it up, rather than having the ability to just listen to people talk,
yeah,
to listen to people talk.
yeah,
Like people can't even listen to well, it doesn't probably exist anymore, but journalism. I've heard great teachers share perspectives about something that's happening on the planet or in politics objectively, but because they don't talk about it in a polarizing way, they assume that they're on some side.
yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean? And it's a trip, because I can talk about the left and right without being reactive. I
yeah,
can also understand the mindset of somebody on the right or left
yeah,
by why they might come to think about these things. And it includes like the type of media they watch to how they see the world to
yeah,
what's really important to them. And I find a gift in that to be able, because I have different types of clients. They
yeah,
really don't know where I'm at politically. So I find I see it almost like a compliment as they assume I'm
yeah,
like them.
yeah,
Isn't that interesting?
yeah,
And for me, it's really about being able to connect to people, even if I disagree with them,
yeah,
being able to understand their story and where they're coming from, because
yeah,
ultimately that's what's going to bring the progress and healing on our planet.
yeah,
Like even like with politics, like what most people don't really see in this is like, how the fuck did these people even get to where they're at?
yeah,
You know what I mean? What collective narrative and lies
yeah,
and whatever else supported this thing to kind of take place,
yeah,
and become what it is, and so there's so much like in the unseen that's happening that we just see the surface of it. And that's why it's so important right now, to know why I'm going here, that all of us have to look at what's in our backyard. We have to
yeah,
look at our thoughts. Like when I said I looked at myself of like when I snapped with that Wells Fargo representative.
yeah,
Personal responsibility is like recognizing I'm still a human and sometimes I have a temper, or I'm I notice that I pay attention to this certain thing in a certain way and it's kind of negative. Like it's like, well, where would that come from? What in me is driving that fear or
yeah,
that judgment about people? Like even here, like people, when I do conversations like we're having right now, there's always some part about the conversation I talk like this
yeah,
because I want people to recognize that whatever they feel is coming from them.
yeah,
They're projecting it onto us
yeah,
because there's nothing you and I have said that's actually negative.
yeah.
You notice that?
Yeah, no, that's huge. No, I was thinking about when you were talking about people. I think we have a survival mechanism that
Yeah.
you know like hardwired into our animal mind is to figure out things quickly so we're safe and all that. Like
Mhm.
that path doesn't seem safe. I heard crackling there. I'm not going down there.
Mhm.
And so we probably adapt that into human relations quickly. We start going like, "Ooh, this person's not trustworthy." And we start categorizing all that. Like I understand that, but what happens is going back to not identifying ourselves, what we're doing is even the spiritualists, we're identifying everyone else though. We're going like, oh, but that person's not spiritual and that one's that and that guy's a that. And so now the phony, the one I identified as a phony, he says something and he might even say something that's actually kind of deep, but I'm already filtering it through the phony filter. I can't even hear that, you know? So one thing I have in one of my reflections in the book, which is the deeper work, is I have a listening meditation. And I go, think about this meditation, we close our eyes, we forget everyone or whatever. Imagine the next time you're having a conversation with anyone that all this stuff that starts coming in your mind, oh, that's a stupid point he just said. Let that go and be right back to listening.
Mhm.
Although that, and then they go, oh, I have this to add. Let me not worry about it. I mean, look, when we're talking, there's times where I go, oh, I have an idea or a story about that. But then I want to bring myself back because I don't want to miss what you're saying. You know, that's more exciting to me than a story that I've told before I know already, you know. And so like it's really interesting about again, just with our labeling and judging of people that it's we're not going to be able to hear things fully. Like whether it's a
Can I
politician
point
you're
something out? I
yeah.
want everyone to just go back to what Satya just said and did. I want you to notice how he's talking to me in a real time moment. And he talks about how he has another voice that, whether it's the past version of himself, maybe ego, it doesn't even really matter. But then he wants to be connected to the new now moment with me, what I'm saying now. That's like true presence. That is becoming aware of like the vehicle. It's becoming aware of it all. And in that space, like it's really hard to react to things because you see how you're participating. And before you like say hit that iceberg, you have the awareness, well, maybe I should go over here. And it's not getting so caught up with what how things have to be. It's literally enlightening the fuck up. You know what I mean? So I just
Yeah.
wanted to point that out. Hopefully everyone got that because it's like when I work with clients. I'm sorry I cut you off,
Oh,
but I
awesome.
think it was a profound moment. Is when I work with clients, I'm not just working with them. There's always a part of me that's above the situation, like watching how they're responding to me.
Yeah.
I also have a moment where I have tools. I have many different like like modalities I can use and things and that make noise. Like literally, I have like Tibetan bowls and all of that, and I like to use different toys. But I also am collaborating with that client, and so I don't know what they're going to bring to that moment. And so while they're shifting, I want to be able to shift to them rather than get caught up with a technique that I've
Yeah.
used for the last three clients or anything that's written in some manual.
Yeah.
So I think it's amazing that you just the way you were talking. Honestly, dude, I just think it's really, I have fun talking to you. I love
Yeah.
seeing kind of someone else who can kind of see himself and not take himself so seriously and hear those thoughts, but also come to this now moment in this
Yeah.
conversation, in this
Yeah.
creation.
Listen, you and I both have you decades more than me life coaching, you know, stuff. Like I also went through a life coaching program. And one amazing thing about life coaching is it's client focused. It's trusting that they have the wisdom inside them and you're just helping them bring it out. So I remember one time working with someone and there's different pathways you can use. And I'm thinking like this pathway. And I said, you know, there's a couple pathways, these two, and I'm thinking this one's better, you know. And she said, I'd like to do the other one. And like, you know, I have to let go and go with what she says, trusting that she has the inner wisdom, trusting that this is what she needs now. And it's just funny about letting go with what is. When I
Mm.
would go to these New Life Expos, which is everything from UFOs to nutrition, I used to love them. Twice a year, I'd go 20 years, I went. Um, I would write, there's a schedule of lectures, and I'd like circle thing, I'm going this, I'd study it before to see what would inevitably happen was I would meet someone at maybe one of these lectures, and then we'd chat afterwards. And I was like, this is what's happening now. And I'd miss the next one because I'm like, this is more what valuable, you could call it that divine time, whatever, but it is about, and you mentioned letting go before, it's about like, this is what's happening right now. Like, I'm not going to hold on to what's not serving me anymore. One more lecture, something I could write some notes on, or a real human interaction. So yeah, interesting stuff about being here. And I think another important point, and this goes with just straight up traditional meditation also, is if you have the idea that your mind needs to be quiet, then you're always going to be miserable because that's what the mind does. It's going to think about things. And so everyone starts and goes, I'm a terrible meditator. I have all these thoughts. Don't worry about that. Use it like I said with my mother, let the blowjob go and bring it right back to here. So, if you can acknowledge also as one on the path, whatever that may be, is that you're going to have moments where your behavior might not be what your vision of ideal is, or you're going to be thinking about things while you want to be present. Like, that's okay. Like, I love that you said you got angry and you go, I forget you. If you didn't say these words directly, you did. You're like, I forgave myself. Like, I got over that because me being guilty about it's not going
Mhm.
to serve me at all. Like,
Mhm.
that feel like being human. So there are going to be things that aren't going to be perfect. I still have judgy thoughts, but I don't believe my mind anymore. I go,
Mhm.
all right, here's more bullshit.
Mhm.
It's like I'm not as hard in my workouts anymore. But let's just say if I'm going to do 10 reps, and my mind at a certain point goes, eight's enough. This like it's going to start talking. And
Mhm.
I go, no, maybe I'll do 12 just to say I don't listen to you. I'm going to do more because of that. So stop doing that. So I thought that was a real deep point in my spiritual growth is when I realized my own thoughts I couldn't actually believe, or trust. The same way as we could be critical of someone else and go, I don't know, they're full of shit or this. Like I was like, this might be full of shit. And it kind of opened me up to more possibilities, more freedom, actually.
Well, well, by the way, we didn't really necessarily have a title to this, but what's interesting is that there is I'm hearing a title called Spiritual Truths, or even what divine timing is, or divine commitments, or whatever. And the reason why I'm bringing it to that is because so much of what we've been talking about is being as present as we can with each moment of life. And also in that it could be where we don't actually have an appointment. Therefore, we have more room to fuck around. Like we can get lost
Yeah.
and we meet a stranger and that stranger's going through something. And like so much happens in that moment, connecting with that person at a bus station or something like that. And then there is where we have literal like commitments. Like I have to pick up my sons at a certain time, no matter what. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Of course, I'd want to if I want to do like hang out in my bubble bath or whatever longer. That feels much better than driving to go get my sons.
Yeah.
But I also have commitments,
Yeah.
and if I'm driving there and I feel like I don't get enough time to myself and I'm frustrated, like, oh God, this is the part of parenting that sucks. I would also take some personal responsibility and go, this is actually telling me that I need to schedule myself better so I
Yeah.
have an extra 15 minutes to myself. That's
Yeah.
in every moment in life when I'm doing something, if there's some resistance, and I know I'm the one who chose that because
Yeah.
I'm not working for anyone,
Yeah.
I'm the one who's making all the decisions in my life, then
Yeah.
I need to take it up to the boss, and that's
Yeah.
me. And I
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
go, what am I doing? Is this serving me anymore? What can I do, with this? And that's not like me pulling out my journal, every time I got to write down a bunch of stuff and process this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
It could be simple, like, fuck, I got to see one less client a day. It's
Yeah.
just like, that's it. Because it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be that difficult.
Yeah.
Because spirit, your spiritual family are there. And it can happen with just being open in a flow. And you go, that's not working anymore. Make a left, make a right, stop that thing. That's it.
Yeah. I remember I went to a fitness convention and this one guy, Paul Check, he's a great fitness
I know
guy.
Paul Check. Yep.
Yeah, very entertaining and very good information. And he's gabbing away like he's a storyteller and gabbing away at the beginning of some lecture. And some woman in the back ends up going like, "When are we going to start the lecture?" You know?
Hmm.
And I was like, "Ooh!" It was like someone heckling a comedian. I was like, "What's going to happen?" So, and he pretty much was like, this is actually all part of it, and she mentioned something about the Bible, like she was a Bible person.
Hmm.
And rather than being like, all right, well, whatever, or get it, he goes, how's that working for you? Kind of like
Hmm.
what you're saying. And she goes, good, yeah. And he goes, that's awesome.
Hmm.
And a couple of things happened. First of all, he was actually happy that she found something that works for her. Many of us, it's like it's got to be my way or the highway.
Hmm.
I don't care that you're happy.
Hmm.
You're not doing it this way.
Hmm.
But also you said, oh, I just got derailed a second. Just let's see. Apologize. Bring me back on track for what you were just saying. Sometimes I need this. I have a gap.
It was about your first talking about Paul Check, but I was talking about
Oh yeah.
working with what is there. Yeah.
Yeah, and also just this. So it's not only this. You got me back, by the way. It's not only how's it working for you because you
Mm.
asked that question. You said, "How's that working?" Okay, it's what you're going to do with that information then.
Mm.
So you actually go like what you said, very solution. You go, okay, I'm self-responsible. I need to do one less client or whatever.
Mhm.
Like it's not just. And I think that's radical self-responsibility is huge, and that to me is a deep spiritual practice. And think about that. You could have nothing, no set spiritual meditative practice. If you just in life constantly took self-responsibility for everything, that the world's not happening to you, it's happening for you, and that
Mhm.
you're a part of that.
Mhm.
Then think about how that would affect everything in life. How your anger at someone else would be like, no, it's just I'm sorry, or no, he's doing that, but I don't necessarily want to be around that kind of energy, so I'm going to move. Like it's all about you, your
Mhm.
time, your energy, your boundaries. And so again, it's like, how's this working for me? And also then what am I going to do about it? That's the putting the action into play.
I keep bringing it to each moment, in this call, and particularly reflecting on things that happened with you. So thank you. So there's that moment we can call you had a brain fart,
Yeah.
and that happens to me at times.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the main reasons why I don't smoke weed,
Yeah.
as much as I used to. Well, not that I was a big pot smoker, but it would be is that I would get high and I would start going on these long, fun, entertaining stories and forget where I was
Yeah.
in the story. And at some point, I was like, "Oh, I can't do this anymore." But I, it's being able to work from that place of vulnerability. Like I didn't even think anything of it. If anything, I checked out and went, "I hope I could bring you to what I was talking about," because I completely forgot,
Yeah. Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
I did in that moment.
Yeah.
And people are worried about that. A lot of people are worried about public speaking because they're afraid that they're
Yeah.
going to say the wrong thing or that what comes out of their mouth is not going to be understood
Yeah.
or they could be judged by it.
Yeah.
And yet that in most moments when we forget something, when we feel insecure, that when we think we don't have the right thing to say or information to do, by letting go of that perfectionism or letting go of the thoughts that we're being judged in that moment,
Yeah.
and also being open to the idea that who we're with, like, can assist us or can
Yeah.
even tell a joke. Like, just say if I didn't even connect to what you're about to say, that I could have said something else, like this moment.
Yeah.
It's like making each moment as real and present with love and compassion and forgiveness. And that's what's helped me, like in my work and on camera, whenever I've done like there's not much out there anymore, but I used to do like live sessions on camera with people where they would go through some breakthroughs, and you can see the camera crew getting uncomfortable because it's some deep stuff,
Yeah.
and like, I don't know where it's going to go, and I don't know if that person's going to where they're going to go with it. But I also know that the moment would have not happened if it wasn't supposed to.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. Every moment, that is what was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
It's really important to acknowledge the moment as beauty, which could be a form of spirituality, then to appreciate, which is going to make us feel better and open and for more positive things to attract onto it. That's like the real vibration of positivity. And then allow. And allow would be the next thing that's supposed to happen in the conversation to add to what is needed. The triple A, that's acknowledge, appreciate, and allow. And in those moments, like that kind of, for me, defines living a spiritual life.
Yeah.
Not checked out. Like taking care of our commitments, to also finding learning in the pause, and the forgetting what we're about to say and finding that beauty. So I appreciate your vulnerability.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
In a way, like just like I was saying with Osho and the gaps, those mindless gaps are actually not a bad thing. Isn't mindlessness good in spirituality?
Yeah.
No mind, And I remember like I've had this experience a couple of times. I remember one of the early ones I had. I was in this health food store, and I was like, should I get the cucumber? Should I get the pickles? Or whatever I was going. Boom, boom. And all of a sudden, I felt myself overwhelmed, like boom, and I just boom, I just stopped for a second. I just in the store, I just stood still and just savored that overwhelmed to nothing. In a way, what would have been really cool is if, during my mind fart, if we just both just stood still and said, let's not even remember anything. Like forget what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Like let's not try and grab onto, whoa, I'm grasping, help, I'm drowning. No, let me drown for a bit. Let me swallow some water and let me experience that. And then go, all of a sudden you realize it's not so scary after all.
It's pretty amazing.
It's
Well, it's
actually,
been it's been great chatting with you. And do you have your book with you?
I don't, yeah, I'm going to tell you
Share.
one
sh-
crazy story of just of that. There is I was working with a guy who's from Pakistan, like through Fiverr, who's helping
Mm,
at it. Our Microsoft Words weren't lining up, and I would do something that would not be right for him formatted.
mm,
So as a result, there's some errors in the book,
mhm.
and I'm a little anal in that I like everything super clean, and so I kept being like, nah, I need to fix this up before I actually have my copy, which is kind of ridiculous. So literally, it's been a few months. I don't have my own copy of my book, which is kind of ridiculous. It is. I should still get one because it doesn't matter. It's nice to hold. And I love the idea of when I bought books to send to someone else. I'm like, oh wow, this is so cool. Like I put this together. But yeah, I literally don't have a copy right now.
Well, I will put, down below or wherever this video goes, where to get your book. And I'll plug my book here. My book is All It Takes Is One, Drop Your One Big Hidden Belief and Master Your Life. It's funny, dude, is that I was talking about this book to someone today, and I don't know what it was about. And I forgot the subtitle. I did. Like it's like it's because like I'm not attached to this either. This whole thing, like I have evolved from this, and there's more in me. It's so funny. I'm like learning this more and more, like how it really is about the process of my own evolution and forever expanding consciousness. But like when I had written the book, I forgot even what was in it, and I started doing podcasts to talk about certain things, and I went, I don't know if that's in the book still, and so I had to go back and read it again to like, oh shoot, okay, that's actually in there, or it's not in there.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I think it's like it's really letting go. Like there's whether it's this moment, whether it's this book, whether it's dinner with a beautiful woman that you're interested in, it's like those are all just fleeting moments to get back to this now moment that is everything.
know what I find an interesting from in my life? I look back at all different times in my life. When I was younger in elementary school, I played a sport each season and I loved it, you know.
Mm,
And certain things in high school, I was student government president. I ran for because I thought it'd be good for college, but there was radicalism and homeroom boycotts and being written up in the papers and all
mhm,
this stuff. All different thing. I competed in martial arts. I traveled Europe with musicals and other things. They all look like a different person when I look back. It's almost
mm,
like I can know it's me, but it's like it doesn't feel totally like me. I can see an old picture and jump in a little bit, but it
mm.
just looks different. So it doesn't mean there's not carryover. So I'm sure there's so many principles of your book, which I'm going through now. It's still you feel like that's a truth. You might still teach it or guide it,
Oh
but
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Oh
But
yeah,
it,
yeah. It's
but the
just that
experience of you writing that book is something that's a little distant, you know. But
yeah, just the more the process of it and what was going on in my life at the
yeah,
time.
yeah,
But well, anyway, dude, what's great to have this conversation and let's see what happens maybe next time as well.
yeah. I do appreciate you a lot. I always feel like right from the start when I started seeing your posts, I liked your contrarian thing, but it was truth. It wasn't just contrary to be like, screw this. And I feel very comfortable with you. I appreciate you. I feel like you're a guide, a mentor, a friend, all that stuff together. So
Thank you,
appreciate it.
brother.
Thanks.
I'll talk to you later.
All right.